So, thank you for coming to my channel and watching. And I understand this is probably not going to be the most entertaining channel in the universe, but it's mine. And I want to go ahead and talk about my card game that I've been working on for the last about 2 years now. And I have been having a lot of issues with it from the start, but I'm finally happy with the path that it's coming on and would like to share this and overall my struggles, I guess, with this. And I know there's a lot of other YouTubers who have done this. Chaos Galaxy is probably the biggest one out there right now. But you know what? He was an inspiration for me, and that's a good thing. If we get more trading card games out there made by more people, everyone just has more fun finding a card game they like. But so my card game right now is Legends, and it's a lot of inspired by Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon mechanics more than Magic the Gathering, but does have its own. And Magic the Gathering, I find that is too iconic. People tend to just make direct clones of it, or it's just too Magic the Gathering. And I've seen some that are like that professionally, not what's in the community being made. But I did take a lot of inspiration from Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon itself in a lot of how card mechanics work. I have taken the prize card system that Pokemon likes doing because I think that's a very good way to have a deck whenever someone loses. They are able to try to keep themselves in the game a little bit more. Whenever a player keeps on winning over and over again, I find that that's a really good way to respond is to make the losing player be able to draw a card. And whenever they're out of cards, the opponent is going to be able to win. And that makes sure that the opponent doesn't just snowball the game, and I like that mechanic a lot. And I know that was probably just introduced in Duel Masters generally, but I think it's a fantastic mechanic, and I'm just going to borrow that for right now. What I'm doing to my game to make it more special is the resource for this game, I guess if you want to call it a resource, is probably going to end up being time. So I want people to, whenever they play a card, that card is going to be staying on the field. The effect's not on the field, but the card is going to be staying on the field, taking up space for a certain allotted period of time. Just because I haven't seen that done yet, and I want to try it, and I ended up really enjoying it. I think it's a good mechanic, but I'm not trying to make it artificially high because I understand the pacing of gameplay from my game specifically. And I think the highest time that a card can be on the field is about 5 turns right now, because that's about the amount of time that the game majority of the game is going to be happening within the first couple turns. So 5 cards is just going to end up 5 turns is just going to end up being like 85-95% of the game is what I think is going to end up being, because you have a chance to score once every turn, including your opponent's turn. And I do enjoy short games with a lot of strategy, even though you can play chess. But if you make your ability to score every turn, I feel like that shortens the game drastically. Being able to mix offense and defense together to be able to score your point card, I guess. And that's just the direction that I want to go. And that's just what ended up happening, I guess. But that, and I mean, that's just what I chose. And everyone can choose whatever they want to. They can choose to have like no real currency in the game, or resource, or whatever you want to put it in the game. Could be like Hearthstone, where you just passively get a resource per turn. You keep up with how much resource you have every turn. Could be Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or Force of Will. Force of Will does something good like that too, where you just get a passive mana every turn, and you draw from a separate deck or what have you be. But that's just what I chose myself. And there's more cards in there. There's two main cards. There's the cards that are going to be played on the field, which before I come up with any names and stuff, I'm more concerned with what they're going to do. So for the time being, I'm just going to identify them as the field cards. And the field cards are going to be the one that's playing. And then I have a face card for my deck, and this will be what the deck revolves around and the creatures I have out in play. Every deck is going to have about one face card, and each one's going to have a different effect and relatively similar stats for my game specifically, because I don't want every card to be just better than another card. I want them to be, here's the stat for it. They're all relatively around the same stat, weaker, stronger ability, and I want the abilities to matter more than the actual stats to matter. So you might not even have to have a stat on there. You could just end up taking your card, removing the stat, and then just have an effect and saying, okay, here's how many points that you need to play per card to win a turn. That's not quite how mine went, but I did go in a very similar direction. And everyone's going to be different. I recommend y'all to be creative. I personally just didn't want my card to go into a Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, or mostly Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic the Gathering type direction where there's multiple creature cards on the field. I like the Pokemon 1 versus 1 gameplay style, and I just made the skeleton of the system, and that's going to take the longest in my experience, is making the skeleton of how your card game is going to work. It took me almost 2 years to be able to get that where I wanted it to be. I think it took me about a year and a half vaguely. And then I'm just like, okay, how do I want this to proceed further? I wasn't even worried about making any cards. And overall, I was just wanting to make sure that I can make a sound rule set for how I want the cards to be. And there's going to be some times they're going to be like, okay, play testing. But I find that like the best way to go about that is people who play trading card games, just ask them, hey, how do you feel about this? And just different ways to experience a game. Just always ask, even if you're the kind of person who's just like, I want this game to be fun for me, you should do that. But at the same time, if you do want to play with other people and stuff other than just make a card game, I would ask for opinions. How does this rule sound? How's this? And definitely be trying to get as much overall criticism and information about your game as much as possible. And I feel like that's helped me out the most. Is I've asked people like, hey, I'm making a card game, yada yada yada. How would you sound? How would you feel about this mechanic in a card game overall? Because I know some people like certain things more than others. That's why people who play Pokemon don't play Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm sure there is a gray area where people interact, but other than the money sink that card games tend to be, there's reasons why certain players play certain games and such. I know there's like, I'm sure there's like Die Hard Vanguard or Buddy Fight or some of the Japanese card games. I'm sure there's Die Hard players over here in America that don't play anything else and such. So, but I just feel like that's just a good way to get started in what I've thought about overall since started making this game. And this is probably the hardest step is making it, and I'm not gonna lie, and this is gonna take forever, and just that's okay. It's gonna take forever, and that's perfectly fine and normal. And you should never ever be afraid of it taking too long as you're passionate about it and want to keep working on it. Because this took me a year or two to make, but it might not take you like, year and a half to make or get to the steps where I am today, where I have a little bit of art and I'm working on it. You should just be happy with it, and you should work at it on your own leisure where you feel happy and you're happy. This is your project, and you shouldn't let other people do it. And I'm doing this for fun. If you're doing this for profit, I mean, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but I'm doing this mostly for fun, and I'm probably not going to make much money off this at all, if any, if I do end up getting packs and what have you, and that's not my goal. My goal is not to become filthy rich off this. I'm having fun, and I want to share people, and I want to make something that people will enjoy playing. But this is so far my first experience making a card game, and I'm just sharing this with y'all, but I really appreciate it if y'all listen. And it'd honestly help if you made sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try to be uploading as much as I can reasonably, because I do want this to become more of a personal project or something I can do for fun other than just playing video games. I would feel more productive doing this. So just go ahead and give me a like and subscribe, please. And thank you for watching.